there and welcome back to Dukascopy TV. Today we're discussing developments impacting international trade, and joining me to discuss this is Erwan Berthelot of White & Case. Welcome back to Dukascopy, Erwan.
Hi, very nice to be back with you.
So let's look at the activity in the WTO. What's happening now with the trade facilitation agreement?
Well, as you remember, at the end of 2013, after the Bali Ministerial Conference, WTO members adopted the trade facilitation agreement as part of a so-called Bali package. Now, they had also set themselves the task to formally implement this agreement into the broader context of the WTO agreements by adapting a protocol to that effect. And this was supposed to happen already last year, but it could not due to, in particular, India trying to push its position in other areas of the negotiation, especially on agriculture, and claiming its right to maintain subsidy programs for food security purposes. So there was almost a complete blockage at the WTO on the adoption of the Trade Facilitation Agreement, or TFA, which could only be resolved late in November last year. Now, the WTO members have finally adopted the agreement and the draft protocol, and it is up for approval by each national WTO member. And they have to deposit instruments of acceptance in order to confirm their endorsement of the agreement. It will require 2/3 of the WTO membership to deposit such instruments before it can actually enter into force. And we're only seeing the first of the WTO members now filing these instruments with WTO. Hong Kong has been the first, followed by a number of others, most recently Singapore, but it may take some time and perhaps well into 2016 before the requisite number of instruments are deposited and the agreement finally enters into force.
And are there any other deliverables in the pipeline that could have an impact on global trade?
Yes, there's quite a lot of work going on at the WTO at the moment. First of all, there is what is called the Doha Work Program, which is basically how to advance the negotiation on all the other elements part of the Doha Development Agenda that were still pending, if I may say, after the Bali package and the adoption of the TFA. Some of these items have been already approved in their main principles at Bali, but need some fine-tuning. Some others had been completely left off the table so far and need to be brought back into the negotiations, such as agriculture, non-agricultural market access, or services, for example. WTO members aim at adopting a work program by July this year, but it is, as usual with the WTO, a little bit uncertain whether they will be able to meet this deadline. One element that could, of course, and will, of course, have an impact on the pace of this discussion is the ministerial conference that will take place in December this year in Nairobi, Kenya, and which de facto sets a kind of goal in terms of timeline to achieve this work program if the July deadline is not met.
So let's focus on TTIP negotiations between the EU and the US. Is it likely that these will be concluded in 2015? And what is likely to happen there?
Well, it's another of these big elements and discussions that will have a significant impact on trade. And to some extent it will depend on the pace at which the WTO negotiations progress or not. But clearly if they don't, there will be even more momentum for bilateral trade agreements such as TTIP or TPP between the United States and a number of Pacific countries to move ahead. In terms of TTIP, the EU Trade Commissioner Cecilia Malmström has recently stated that she was hopeful to have at least a skeleton agreement by the end of 2015. So that tells pretty much the story. A skeleton will likely be still far away from a complete and finalized agreement, but a significant milestone in that direction. The TTIP is very high on the EU's trade agenda, and the EU has clearly made TTIP one of its priorities. It is eventually a little less of a priority on the US side, and it's fair to say that the EU is probably more in demand in terms of market opening and elements to negotiate here than is the US. Also on the US side, people are less confident about the possibility to swiftly conclude that negotiation within, let's say, the 1 or 2 next years. It's interesting to note, however, that in its recent State of the Union address, President Barack Obama has clearly called upon Congress to grant the President trade promotion authority, which would enable him to kind of fast-track the negotiating process. Obama clearly is hoping to conclude this negotiation by the end of his term, but it will obviously be difficult to conclude it in 2015. My personal opinion, this is a fairly unrealistic deadline, although on some of the most controversial elements of the negotiation, like agriculture, financial services, 2015 should be the year where we see progress or not. But a complete conclusion of the agreement in 2015 is unlikely. In 2016, as we know, will be a little bit of a tricky year because it's presidential election year in the US, and pretty much everything tends to come to a stop in a presidential election year. So 2015, 2016, 2017, it's unclear. We hope to see progress on TTIP in 2015, but final conclusion of the agreement, in my view, is still far away.
So it might not be this year, but it'll definitely be interesting to see how these negotiations develop. Thank you so much for joining me today, Erwan.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
That's all from the Duke of Scott Big TV studios here in Geneva for today. Thanks for tuning in, and remember to keep clicking back. Bye for now.